The Salem Inn, a looming structure on the outskirts of town, stood as a grim monument to a past filled with dark whispers and unspoken horrors. Its tall, narrow windows were clouded with age, and ivy crept up its weathered stone walls, giving the inn an almost sentient appearance. The wooden sign, worn and barely legible from centuries of exposure, creaked in the wind, announcing its name to the few who dared approach. The townsfolk avoided the inn, their eyes darting with unease whenever its name was mentioned. On a dreary, overcast day, a lone historian arrived in Salem, driven by a blend of skepticism and curiosity. The historian had come to research the infamous witch trials, and the Salem Inn, with its shadowy history, was an irresistible enigma. Despite the warnings from the locals, the historian felt an unexplainable pull toward the inn, as if an unseen force was guiding their steps. The heavy wooden door groaned as the historian pushed it open, the sound echoing through the cavernous foyer. Inside, the air was thick with dust and the unmistakable scent of decay. Faded wallpaper peeled from the walls, and cobwebs hung like ghostly drapes in the corners. The dim light filtering through the grimy windows cast long, eerie shadows, making the place feel alive with unseen eyes. Stepping cautiously into the foyer, the historian felt an oppressive weight settle over their shoulders. To the left, a grand staircase ascended into darkness, its banister adorned with intricate carvings that seemed to move in the dim light. To the right, a long corridor stretched out, its end obscured by shadows. Compelled by an unexplainable urge, the historian chose the staircase, each step creaking underfoot, the sound unsettling in the otherwise silent inn. At the top of the stairs, the historian found a corridor lined with doors, each leading to different rooms. The silence was heavy, broken only by the occasional creak of the old building settling. One door, slightly ajar, drew the historian's attention. Pushing it open, they entered a large room that had once been a grand parlor. A cold, lifeless fireplace dominated the room, its mantelpiece adorned with an ornate, albeit dusty, mirror. Above it hung a portrait of a stern-looking man, his eyes seeming to follow the historian's every move. Feeling uneasy under the portrait's gaze, the historian turned away and noticed a small, hidden door at the back of the parlor. It was unmarked and seemed deliberately concealed. Pushing it open, the historian discovered a narrow staircase leading down into darkness. The air that wafted up was damp and musty, carrying a faint, metallic scent. Driven by an insatiable curiosity, the historian descended, each step creaking ominously beneath their weight. At the bottom of the stairs, the historian found themselves in a basement. The low ceiling and stone walls gave it the feel of a tomb. The faint light from the stairwell barely penetrated the gloom, and the historian's flashlight flickered as it swept across the room. Shelves lined the walls, filled with dusty, long-forgotten objects. In the center stood a large wooden table, its surface stained and scarred from countless unknown uses. Examining the table, the historian felt a sudden cold draft sweep through the room, extinguishing the flashlight's beam. Plunged into darkness, the historian fumbled to turn it back on, but the device refused to work. Panic set in as the oppressive darkness closed in around them. The faint sound of whispering voices reached the historian's ears, growing louder and more insistent. Desperate to escape, the historian stumbled back towards the stairs, only to find the door at the top had inexplicably closed. Frantic, they pushed and pounded on it, but it remained firmly shut. The whispers grew louder, a cacophony of tortured voices echoing off the stone walls. In the darkness, the historian felt a presence, cold and malevolent, drawing closer. A sudden, intense pressure on their chest forced the historian to the floor, gasping for breath. The voices coalesced into a single, sinister chant, the words indistinguishable but filled with a palpable malevolence. The historian's vision blurred, the darkness closing in tighter, the weight of the unseen force crushing them. Just as consciousness began to slip away, the pressure lifted, and the basement fell silent. Gasping for air, the historians struggled to their feet, their flashlight flickering back to life. The door at the top of the stairs now stood open, as if inviting them to leave. Stumbling up the steps, they emerged into the parlor, the sense of dread lifting slightly as they left the basement behind. But the historian knew they had to uncover the inn's secrets, driven now not by curiosity, but by a need to understand the malevolent force they had encountered. The historian explored the rest of the inn with a renewed sense of urgency, documenting everything they could find. Each room seemed to hold a piece of the puzzle, fragments of a dark history that began to take shape. In the attic, they discovered old journals and letters, their pages yellowed and brittle with age. The writings spoke of strange occurrences, of guests who vanished without a trace, and of a dark presence that seemed to haunt the inn. As the historian pieced together the fragmented history, a chilling picture emerged. The Salem Inn had been a place of refuge during the witch trials, a sanctuary for those accused of witchcraft. But it had also been a place of torment, where dark rituals were performed in secret. The malevolent force that now haunted the inn was the result of these rituals, a vengeful spirit trapped within its walls. The historian's research led to a final, horrifying revelation. The stern man in the portrait, once the inn's owner, had been a fervent believer in the dark arts. It was he who had conducted the rituals, seeking to harness the power of the accused witches for his own gain. But his ambition had backfired, and instead of gaining power, he had unleashed a curse upon the inn and its inhabitants. Determined to put an end to the curse, the historian devised a plan. They gathered the necessary materials for a cleansing ritual, hoping to banish the malevolent spirit once and for all. As night fell, the historian prepared the ritual in the grand parlor, the oppressive silence broken only by the crackling of the fire they had lit in the fireplace. The ritual began, and the air grew thick with tension. The historian recited the ancient incantations, their voice steady despite the fear gnawing at their insides. As the ritual progressed, the temperature in the room plummeted, and the whispers returned, more insistent and angry than before. Shadows danced on the walls, twisting and contorting into grotesque shapes. A sudden, forceful gust of wind extinguished the fire, plunging the room into darkness. The historian's flashlight flickered and died, leaving them in complete blackness. The malevolent presence surged, an overwhelming force that pressed in from all sides. The historian felt icy fingers wrap around their throat, squeezing the breath from their lungs. Summoning the last of their strength, the historian completed the final incantation. The oppressive darkness exploded in a blinding flash of light, and the malevolent presence let out a deafening wail. The light grew brighter, banishing the shadows and filling the room with an otherworldly glow. The pressure on the historian's throat lifted, and they collapsed to the floor, gasping for breath. When the light finally faded, the room was silent and still. The oppressive atmosphere had lifted, replaced by a sense of calm. The historian knew the ritual had worked. The malevolent spirit had been banished, the curse lifted. Exhausted but triumphant, they left the Salem Inn, the first rays of dawn breaking over the horizon. The historian's account of the events at the Salem Inn became a sensation, the tale of their harrowing experience capturing the imagination of many. The inn, now free of its dark past, slowly began to attract new visitors, curious to see the place where history and horror had intertwined. Yet, despite the newfound peace, some claimed to still feel a chill in the air, a lingering reminder of the darkness that once resided there. The Salem Inn stood as a testament to the power of history and the resilience of the human spirit. Its dark past had been brought to light, the shadows dispelled by the courage of one determined historian. But the memory of those tortured souls and the sinister rituals that had bound them would forever haunt the pages of history, a chilling reminder of the thin veil between the seen and the unseen.